Just making it up. Okay, I'm rolling. So, maybe just tell me about your spiritual practice.
Okay. So I started painting in about 1993, and while I was doing that, I encountered a book about meditation. And it seemed to me that the state everyone was going for in meditation was the state that all the artists were going for as well, this place, the zone, you know. And I thought, well, geez, if I studied meditation, I could figure out how to get into the zone more easily. That just seemed a logical thing to my mind. And so I just read a bunch of different books, and really didn't help me. It gave me some clues, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't really understand what it meant to meditate. And after about a year and a half, I found out about a school in Boulder, Colorado called Naropa Institute at the time. It's now called Naropa University. And you could get college credits for taking meditation classes, and they had a whole host of other very interesting subject matter to study. And so I applied, I was accepted, and I studied there for a year, basically as an art major, studying art history, and meditation. And my original idea was to connect all these things together, and I didn't need to connect them together any more than doing them. It almost was like, by doing the meditation, I didn't even need to talk about it. It helped me to paint, it helped me to be motivated, it helped me to get in the zone when I walked into my studio. You know, where am I coming from, how do I leave the world behind and just be here, now? And so in my opinion, it helps the mind to be sharper, but it also helps as an artist to open me up to possibilities. It's not that I'm a know-it-all, I don't know anything. In fact, I feel like I know less now than ever. But by being present, it's easier to recognize opportunities, and as an artist, it's easier to recognize accidental intersections that are invaluable. And so much of my work is connected to accidents and randomly how things fit together that create a feeling of that they belong together. That they didn't accidentally fit together, they accidentally fit together, but then they looked like they should have fit perfectly forever, and how did no one ever do that before? And I'm exploring that the most in my painting currently with color relationships. For me, a short painting, a painting that takes a short amount of time, is not satisfying. I want a painting that's involved, that is a process, that also connects to a bigger picture. So in my work, all these things kind of connect together, but there's a certain meditative characteristic to much of what I create that you could explain as sort of simple and straightforward. I mean, it seems very hyper and complex, but it's really simple.
A lot of your work consists of accumulations of tiny, repetitive marks.
Yes. That's demarcating time. If you think about a Vermeer painting, he spent hundreds of hours to make you feel 1 second profoundly. I spent hundreds of hours, and you can see every single mark I made in those hundreds of hours. And it creates a more overwhelming sense of time. And I've described it as, you know, a prisoner marking off the days, you know. But you see it, and like Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man, when the toothpicks hit the floor. Oh, well, there's 475 toothpicks. Well, sometimes you see all these marks, and there's a mathematical thing that happens that's almost profound, because for your brain to think, wow, that is thousands of tiny marks, and they're super evident, and they're obviously handmade. They're not machine-made. And it's almost like it takes that much time to get anywhere, to do anything, you know? But we don't think about it. Our time happens so quickly, it's so fast. We don't keep track of the seconds, you know what I mean? If you try to write down what you thought, every second it would be impossible. It would be mind-numbing, you know? And I like exploring the relentless persistence of tiny mark making.
Does it sort of anchor you in the present moment as you're working too?
Absolutely. absolutely. In one fashion, it's instant gratification. Something always happens. And every time I add a new mark, it creates a new relationship with all the colors that are around it. And when I add 20 marks, suddenly this whole area has a whole bunch of new relationships. I have to pay attention. I have to. Every mark is there, and there's such short marks. If I look away, I'm going to lose track. It's like when you're driving your car. You kind of need to maintain a certain amount of consciousness, of presence, of mind to do it properly. And it's very much like that.
So would you say you kind of develop your technique in conjunction with your meditation practice to actually generate that effect in the studio, so that you had to pay attention?
That would be a really, really great way of saying it. Yes, I think that for me, as I said, a painting that's not time-consuming is not satisfying. So for me, I like a painting that takes a while, and in many ways, I'm not a great meditator. As I said, I only ever got to the basic level of meditation instruction. I never took any higher level courses. And while I do it very regularly, I've never gotten to doing, an hour a day or 3 hours a day, which, that's that spiritual ladder you're supposed to climb. In many ways, working in the way that I work forces me to meditate. And I often paint for more than 40 hours a week, and so I'm really in there. And maybe it's not as deep as a totally silent sitting meditation, but it definitely has cumulative effects of calming down my whole being, making me more present, making me more conscientious of my environment and everything else. So yes, it's a great way for me to force myself to meditate. Some of my work I have visions beforehand, but my visions are not generally what the end product is going to look like exactly. It's more an approach. If I approach in this manner with this technique, that seems like it should produce an interesting end result. But I don't necessarily know what that's going to be. And so that's often part of the adventure. Some of my work, not the Mandala series, but some of my more grassland and seascape pieces, I'll start with a source image that I have found or I have photographed. And even though I'm thinking about that and looking at it, I'm not trying to reproduce it. It's just inspiration, and I don't know exactly what I'm going to end up with at the end. It depends on how far I go. Sometimes in the middle I change it up. Sometimes in the middle I'm like, I don't even need this picture anymore. I got a killer idea. And it turns into something totally different. So I rarely have an end goal I'm trying to achieve. It's more like a particular process that I'm going to jump into and see where it goes. I make lots of orange grasslands. Every single one is totally different. But I start out thinking orange grassland. Do I want my work to alter the consciousness or affect the consciousness of my viewer? Absolutely, in a profound manner if possible. I'm hoping that when people first encounter my work, they will be forced to acknowledge they don't understand how it was fabricated. And people they can't imagine that I made those marks with a brush. And if I did, I'm really, really crazy. That's just like totally berserk to think. Now, they don't think anything about Vermeer, but it's because you can't see the time he put in. And with the tool I use, which is a pinstriping tool for cars that applies paint in lines, it makes a very precise line, which again seems counter to a paintbrush. And so my initial hope is by a lack of familiarity with what they're even looking at. I've had people ask me, is this a digital printout? Is this a tapestry? What am I even looking at? Why does it have this weird texture to it? And so, that's the basic question of life, where you're going, why? How? And so if I can get people to suddenly go, I don't understand. That, I think, is an important first question for anybody ever. Well, I don't understand. I obviously don't know everything. And the way our perception tends to work is we perceive for a nanosecond, and then we fill in the blanks. Oh, I know all about that. And then we know exactly what it is. We don't have to pay any more attention. We can move on, and, you know, that's most of life. You know, most of the things we encounter, people we encounter, we already know. We just know. And so when you encounter something you don't get, it forces you to pause for a minute. And I think also the optical effects that I create in my work, the optical effects cause you to pause. They do something to most people's eyes where they capture your optical attention in a way where your eyes you want to keep looking. Whoa, you know, I'm seeing more, and, you know, just 2 seconds further and you're noticing things you didn't see at that first nanosecond of perception. And again, it pulls the viewer out of their mind, out of their preconceived notion, out of their already knowing everything, into a place where they don't know. And I think that's always a good place to visit.